Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world. And so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you. And what a lovely story that we are listening to right now about a young woman who for some reason finds herself driving back to her childhood home, where she grew up in a trailer park when she was a teenager. And she just finds herself driving to this place. She doesn't even know if the trailer park still exists, but she drives there. And it's almost as if she's being called there for some mysterious reason. So we're about to find out what happens next. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with part 3 of our story tonight. Aunt Gladys lifted up my chin, so her fierce blue eyes drilled straight into mine. Now you listen good, love. You're going nowhere. Do you understand that? This is your home for keeps, and no one is ever going to throw you out. Not even Petra over there, she said with a wink. I think Petra already likes you. She's a very discerning cat, you know. So you're not going to send me back to Southern California if you decide you don't like me after all? Heavens no, love. You're family now. You belong here. You're the only family I've got left. So you're like a daughter to me now. Even if you annoy me day in and day out, I'd never send you away, and that's a promise. I'd rather you not call me Aunt Gladys, though. It's a bit of a mouthful, don't you think? Just call me Gladys. I'm very happy with that. In the short space of time that we've been together, I'm already beginning to enjoy your company very much. So I don't want you to leave, not under any circumstances. I won't be any trouble, I really promise you, Aunt Gladys. I doubt that, love. Very much I do. I'm sure you'll be a lot of trouble. You're 12 years old, heading straight to your teenage years. And I remember what I was like as a teenager myself. I gave my parents a lot of grief, but they loved me all the same regardless. That's how families are, love. You'll soon learn that. They embrace all the good, the bad, and the ugly. For love does not come with any conditions. The main thing is, love, what I'm trying to say to you is that this house, I want you to always feel is your own. Not that it's a house, of course, it's a trailer. But I want you to feel comfortable here nevertheless, because this is where you belong. And don't worry about foster care or about the system anymore, because you've long since left that behind. So much as you like your very good friend, Mrs. Bott, you won't be seeing her anymore. Not if I have anything to do with it, anyway. Really? I asked, unable to believe how good it felt to hear her saying this. I'm here for keeps? I'm not going to be moved around anymore? You're here for keeps, love, said my great-aunt Gladys with a firm conviction. And so began my incredible relationship with my great-aunt Gladys, who became like a mother to me, and we grew incredibly close, to such an extent that I couldn't imagine my life being without her. I settled into Gladys's trailer as comfortably as a duck to water, and I really felt for the very first time in my young life that I finally belonged somewhere, and the security that cushioned my life gave me a great deal of confidence, something that had been sorely lacking in my early years. I soon got to know all the older people living in the trailer park. Many of them were characters, but my aunt was absolutely right about Mrs. Hawkskill. The moment she caught sight of me outside Gladys's trailer, she descended on me like a vulture, as she looked at me through dark, curious eyes that failed to hide their inquisitiveness. On that day she was wearing a bright lime green tracksuit. I'd never seen such a glaring green colour before, and it really made her look as if she was a female praying mantis. Her long grey hair was braided away from her face, while her dark, wide, bulging eyes studied me as I was bending over my aunt's petunias, trying to clear away some of the dead leaves from the terracotta pots. And when she came up behind me, without my seeing her, I remember getting quite the start. But the moment I saw her, I knew exactly who she was, based on my aunt's fitting description, because she looked to be the epitome of someone who is extremely nosy, and it didn't help, of course, that she had a long pointy nose that twitched when she talked to me. "So where did you spring from, young lady?" she asked me. "I haven't seen you around here before. But let me tell you, the piebald trailer park could do well with some young blood for a change. We're all getting old around here, you know. I dare say you must be connected to Gladys in some way. A relative, perhaps?" she asked, raising a questioning brow. "That's right. Gladys is my great-aunt." "The cheeky devil," said Mrs. Hawkskill. "She never mentioned you before. I didn't even know she had any living family members. Well, welcome, young lady, to the piebald trailer park. If you ever get bored and you fancy a nice little chat, I'm in the mint green trailer over there with the pink door." All these years later, I was no longer that vulnerable 12-year-old girl anymore. As I stood on this sequestered country road, lost in the fragrant memories of my past, that smelt as sweetly nostalgic as the pine needles dotted around me on this road, that filled the crisp air with their woody citrusy notes, I pulled out my cell phone from the back pocket of my jeans to call my husband. I wasn't sure how he'd react when he learnt my news, and that I'd been travelling for many hours, and was now back at a place I'd always called home. "Cam, it's me," I said. "Well, of course it's you," came my husband's chuckle. "I think I'd recognise your name on the caller ID, don't you? So what's up, babes? You sound as if you're far away. It's like the phone has a poor signal, I'm afraid, so your voice sounds rather faint." "That's because I am far away, Cameron. I've been driving non-stop to get here. Can you believe it, Cameron? I'm back. I came back. It's been 16 long years." "Sorry to interrupt you, babe, but what exactly are you talking about when you say you're back? Are you saying you're back at the old trailer park where you grew up as a young teenager with Gladys Fenchurch? If that's the case, what the hell are you doing there?" "That's a very good question, Cam. I don't even know the answer to that myself. I'm not actually sure, but I'm not at the trailer park exactly. I'm on the sequestered country road that is a 10-minute walk away from the trailer park. It was where I was dropped off as a girl by the yellow school bus." "You don't know why you're there? Isn't that a bit outlandish?" came my husband's shocked response. "Well, it's hard to explain, Cameron." "Well, I'm listening. I haven't got all day, but I can listen." "Well, last night, Cam, when I was fast asleep, I had a vivid dream. And when I say vivid, I mean lucid. I have never dreamt like that before, Cameron. I never have dreamt, with every detail so pronounced in my dream. I was back at the trailer park, where I'd grown up as a teenager with Aunt Gladys. Oh, my word, the dream just gave me goosebumps. In the dream, I saw Great Aunt Gladys waving at me from inside the trailer. She was waving at me furiously. It was like she was welcoming me back here, urging me to come in, like she did when I first arrived at the trailer park, as a 12-year-old girl. It was so bizarre, let me tell you." "So let's get this right, Rex. Because of this so-called very vivid dream of yours, you decided to get into the car and go on an intrepid adventure all of your own and travel straight back to the past. Is that it? If you don't mind my saying, it sounds profoundly odd." "It wasn't exactly like that, Cameron. It's very hard to explain what happened. But after you left this morning, I got out of bed and had a long hot shower. I packed a suitcase and got into the car and drove and drove. I didn't even know where I was going. And then I found myself here. I felt as if I was acting on autopilot, as if something was urging me to come back here. I know it sounds so silly. Anyway, besides all that, I didn't tell you, but today is actually the anniversary of Gladys's death. I've been thinking of her an awful lot lately, you know. Well, I always do, of course." "Oh, babes, why didn't you tell me it was the anniversary of Gladys's death? We could have gone out to celebrate her life together. No wonder you're all over the place. You're emotional. Your great-aunt had the most positive impact on your life. And you turned out so well because of her influences on you. Look at you now. Not only are you the most amazing wife any man could ever ask for, but you're a very successful journalist with pristine ethics who refuses to be brought by the establishment. And that's a rare quality indeed. You're a very special person, Rexella. And I never tell you that enough. I know exactly why you drove all the way out there. It makes perfect sense to me. You do? But of course I do. You wanted to feel close to Gladys. But I want to tell you one thing, babes. I am quite sure that when you think of Gladys, she's already there with you. You think so? Absolutely. One thing is for sure. You're never going to find Gladys in a graveyard with granite and fading flowers, any more than you're going to find her at the trailer park. Wherever she is in the ethereal realm, she's certainly not hanging around here. But my bet is she's watching over you every time you so much as think of her. Cam, I don't know how to say this to you, but I'm really scared to go back to the trailer park. That's why I'm on this sequestered road, you see. It's 10-minute walk from here and probably 2 minutes in the car. But what if it's not there anymore? It's been 16 long years. Supposing the place has been bulldozed and, God forbid, has become a farmer's field with cows traipsing around the place. Or what if someone has built a sizable mansion on the land? Well, babe, I hate to burst your bubble on this one, but nothing ever stays the same, does it? It's the cycle of life. Think about it for a moment. What about a caterpillar when it becomes a butterfly? Or what about winter when it turns into spring? Nothing is a constant. So there is a big possibility that you need to prepare yourself for, and that is that the Piebald trailer park may not exist anymore, and you have to accept that. Please don't say that, Cameron. I'm scared that you're right. I don't want the Piebald trailer park to be gone. It's got such a special place in my heart. So many happy memories. If it's gone, I know, babes, you'll be upset. And that's perfectly understandable. Well, if it makes you feel any better, when I went back to my old childhood home, I was devastated that lovely little bungalow that I was raised in as a little boy had been cruelly bulldozed, and in its place was an ugly gas station. I was mortified. It felt as if my childhood memories had been obliterated. But you know something? Memories may fade, but they don't ever go away. And at least you have those memories about the park, in your heart, even if it is no longer there. So you really think that, do you? That the Piebald trailer park doesn't exist anymore? Is that what you're saying, Cam? I didn't say that, babes. Don't put words in my mouth. You won't know until you go there, will you? I'm scared to go there, Cam. Unless my worst fears are confirmed. Back in the day it was a delightful trailer park, you know. A lot of characters lived in those trailers. People I really genuinely liked. They were all like family to me, the whole lot of them. The trailer park was owned and managed by a man called Mr. Piebald, which was why the trailer park was called the Piebald Trailer Park in the first place. Ah, well, that would make perfect sense to me, Cam chuckled. People love to name places after themselves. It's a vanity thing, I rather suspect. So what was this Mr. Piebald like? He wasn't one of those ruthless landlords, was he? Throwing anyone out who didn't pay their rent in time? I know the type only too well from my university years. No, he wasn't like that, Cam. If I remember right, I think he was in his 40s when I actually left the trailer park. He had such a shiny bald head, you know, that if you buffed up the windows in your trailer, you'd never get them as shiny as his head was. The man had a weakness for pies, so his surname, Mr. Piebald, really suited him. Gladys used to say if you were a bit behind with your rent, that you just had to give Mr. Piebald a big fat piece of homemade apple pie, and he'd overlook any payment delay. That's hilarious. So that means he must be alive today, surely. Well, of course he must be alive. It's only been 16 years since I left the park. I guess he'd be in his late 50s by now, or early 60s. He was quite the character, you know. Everybody liked him an awful lot. He actually lived in one of the trailers at the park. His was a blue trailer with a white door. There were no airs and graces with Mr. Piebald. What you saw with him is what you got. as he wore his heart on his sleeve. I understood Mr. Piebald inherited the Piebald trailer park from an uncle of his that he didn't even know existed. And when he got that huge chunk of land, he decided to make a business out of it and turn it into a trailer park. I guess he lived on the money that people paid him for their rentals. He was a simple man, you see, who probably had always lived hand to mouth until he inherited the land. Before he became a landowner, well, he was an odd jobs man, doing little jobs for people around the place. He told my Aunt Gladys that he'd never been ambitious, which was why his ex-wife left him, I suspect. I guess she didn't fancy living in a trailer park for the rest of her life.
What makes you say that? Maybe she did like the simple life, as much as Mr. Piebald did, but maybe she didn't like her husband very much.
No, it wasn't Mr. Piebald. It was definitely the trailer park she didn't like. Her name was Gertie. She was so full of herself, inflated ego, if you know what I mean. She looked down on everyone at the trailer park, as if she thought she was a superior species. I think she wanted Mr. Piebald to sell the Piebald trailer park and buy her a lovely little house in the countryside. She thought she'd be able to persuade him to do just that, but it never happened. You see, Mr. Piebald loved an easygoing, carefree way of life and a minimum amount of responsibility, and Gertie hated that. He insisted in living in their humble little trailer, and that infuriated her. I remember very vividly one day me and Aunt Gladys heard this hair-raising screeching sound. Let me tell you, it scared the bejesus out of me, Cameron. I was sleeping in my bed at the time and had woken to this loud caterwauling noise. And my Aunt Gladys said, "What on earth is that?" We thought someone's dog was being attacked by a coyote or something, and we rushed to the door of our trailer to see what was going on. There she was, Gertie, still in her curlers. She was wearing her slippers and pyjamas. I don't think she cared that anyone was watching her, and that she had woken up the entire trailer park. Perhaps she enjoyed having an audience, as everyone in the trailer park was standing outside their trailers watching what was going on. Mrs. Hawkskill, who was the gossip at the trailer park, well, I suspect the whole drama was orgasmic to her. I remember Aunt Gladys said to me, "Who needs a television when you can open your front door to watch a drama like this unfold before your very eyes?" And believe me, there was quite a lot of drama going on that morning.
So what happened? Let me guess. Gertie threw a hissy fit.
Something like that. Poor Mr. Piebald. I felt so desperately sorry for him. The caterwauling sound was actually coming from Gertie. I didn't believe it was possible for a human being to make a noise like that. Never heard anything like it before or since. Gertie was glaring at Mr. Piebald.
"I've had enough of you, Emmett! Enough of you! You hear me? You're a loser! A complete loser! And God only knows why I married you! I must have been completely mad!" "You echo my sentiments too, my darling. I ask myself that all the time. Why on earth did I marry her? The feeling's mutual. I've had enough of you as well." "What the hell is wrong with you, Emmett? Why can't we move away from this awful, god-awful place? Why do you have zero ambition? I don't want to live in a bloody trailer all my life, I'll have you know. I'm much better than that, and all these dreadful losers that live in these trailers. I've put up with this for long enough. But you're always the same, aren't you? You never change. You don't want to enhance our standard of living, do you? And we can change our standard of living if only you would sell this place. I live in a space where there isn't enough room to swing a cat, and you don't even care about that. You expect me to live in this trailer park for the rest of my damn life. I'm not going to live like this a moment longer. You hear me, Emmett? I won't put up with this."
And with that she pulled her slippers off her feet. I think she wanted to throw something at her husband, and her slippers were the closest thing at hand. She threw them at him, and then marched defiantly into the trailer, bringing out a black bin bag full of her own clothes. She jumped into her red Mini Cooper and was gone. We never saw her again after that. Mr. Piebald got a divorce from her, and he blossomed once she was out of his life. He really did. He swore blind after that, that he'd never ever marry again, and as far as I know, he never did."
"Well, I can't say I blame him," chuckled Cameron. "I must say the man sounds like he could be quite set in his ways. So based on what you've just told me, there's a very strong possibility that the trailer park may well still exist. And who knows, Mr. Piebald might still be there."
Cameron's casual words suddenly made me feel euphoric. "You really think so?" I asked. "You think there's a strong possibility he could still be there?"
"Well, 16 years isn't as long as you think, you know. But don't get your hopes up, love. I don't want you to get crushed. But there is no point harping on whether it does or does not exist, the trailer park, I mean. You can find out now. You're there, you might as well do just that. How long are you planning to stay in the area? Or are you going to return home after you've seen what you wanted to see, whatever that is?"
"I don't know, Cam. I'll keep you posted. Let's just say I will see you when I see you, and I don't know when that will be." As I ended the phone call, I climbed back into my gold SUV and took the right-hand turn at the end of the road rather nervously. I drew in a huge sigh of relief when the old sign for Piebald Trailer Park was still there, where it had always been. Could I dare to hope that the trailer park still existed? If the sign was up, it could mean the trailer park was still there. I drove rather gingerly down the long windy road through the trees, and gasped when the trees opened out into a very large expansive field, dotted with so many trailers, with the woods on one side and the Olympic mountain range on the other. Nothing had changed. Everything was exactly as I remembered. The trailer park existed. The bright-coloured trailers had been well maintained over the years. They were still brightly painted in their cheerful colours, which made me wonder if Mr. Piebald was still around. He had to be, surely. There was no activity around any of the trailers at that time of the day, which wasn't altogether surprising. I did notice a decrepit old man sitting outside a purple trailer with a pink door. He was seated on an Adirondack chair and smoking a pipe very casually. He looked up at me through his crinkled, bright, cheerful-looking eyes and gave me a friendly nod, and I returned the favour. I then drove straight up to the blue and white trailer which had once belonged to Mr. Piebald. Was he still around, I wondered? There was a green Land Rover parked outside Mr. Piebald's trailer home, and I recognised that Land Rover. I knew it belonged to Mr. Piebald. If the Land Rover was parked outside his trailer, then it must mean that he was still very much around. My heart began to skip in my chest excitedly. I climbed out of my car and trotted over to the front door, and before I knocked, the door abruptly swung open, and there was Mr. Piebald, with his shiny head and very cheerful greyish-blue eyes, looking at me.
"Bloody hell! Is that you, Rexella?"
"It's me, Mr. Piebald. I bet you're shocked to see me."
"Well, I am, most certainly. I can't believe it," said Mr. Piebald, wiping his shiny bald head. "I can't believe it. How long has it been since I saw you last?"
"Probably 16 years, I imagine."
"Doesn't time fly? It always reminds me how old I'm becoming. 16 years. It feels like only the other day since you left. And what brings you here, Rexella? This is a pleasing surprise, let me tell you."
"I don't know why I'm here, Mr. Piebald. Even I can't answer that question. Last night, shall we say, I dreamt about the trailer park and about Aunt Gladys. I got in my car and drove here, without even thinking about it, and here I am."
"Good Lord, that's a rather outlandish thing for you to do. But I'm very glad you're here. I am so pleased to see you. It's been a long time."
"I must admit, I didn't think your trailer park would still be here, Mr. Piebald. I was so pleased to see it was. I was so delighted to see it was still here."
"Why wouldn't it still be here? I'm not that old, Rexella. Did you think I'd be pushing up the daisies by now? Surely not."
"No, of course I didn't think that. I knew you'd be around, but I wasn't sure you'd still have the place, the trailer park. Everything these days is bulldozed, is it not?"
Mr. Piebald scratched his bald head reflectively. "You know me, Rexella. I'm very set in my ways. That's why the wife left me. She couldn't stand the fact that I refused to change. Many things around me do change, but I'm always the same. This place has my heart. It's always been my home. And I have no intention of selling the Piebald trailer park until I draw my very last breath. As you can see, I've kept all the trailers in impeccable condition, repainting them every year, so that nothing around here looks, forlorn and sad. I make a decent enough income from the rentals, so I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Piebald. You have no idea how glad I am to hear that.
So you're not thinking of moving back to my trailer park, are you, Rexella? Were you having wistful dreams of returning to your teenage abode?
He teased, giving me a charming wink. Mr. Piebald had not changed at all. He may have become a little older, granted, but he was just as charming as I remembered him to be, with a cheeky sense of humour, and seeing him again brought a warmth to my heart. It was good to be back here again. Although why I'd come back here was still a question I couldn't answer. I looked at Mr. Piebald with a surprised expression developing on my face, because I'd never known him to have a trailer going free. If he was asking me if I was returning to my childhood abode, could I dare to hope that Gladys's old trailer was not occupied at the moment? I knew that Mr. Piebald's rentals at the Piebald trailer park came usually with a long waiting list, as people wanted to live in Mr. Piebald's trailers because they were so incredibly well maintained, and the views over the mountains were sensational. You mean to tell me, Mr. Piebald, unless I've got this wrong, of course, that you got a trailer available for rent? You do surprise me. That would be a first.
If you must know, Rexella, I do have one trailer for rent. And it's the very trailer you used to live in with your Aunt Gladys when she was alive. The old lady who lived there, Mrs. Miranda Button, well, she was getting extremely frail, and I'm afraid she went to live with her daughter in Detroit. Her daughter was here 2 days ago to pick her up. We were very sad to see Miranda go, but she was getting to a stage where she couldn't do very much for herself, and was completely housebound. I was the one doing all her shopping for her. As I was saying, she left the trailer 2 days ago, so I've been getting it up to scratch before I rent it out again. And now here you are, so your timing is impeccable to say the very least.
You're joking, Mr. Piebald, I said, sounding aghast. You mean to tell me my Aunt Gladys's old trailer is available for rent? Is that what you're saying? You wouldn't rent it out to me for a few days, would you? I'd love to stay there, but I'm not looking for anything long-term, I'm afraid. I guess living in the trailer for a couple of days would revive some of those old memories of my childhood. I already feel nostalgic just being back here again.
Of course you feel nostalgic, Rexella. Anyone would. This was where you spent your teenage years. I myself am glad to see you again. And as far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to stay here for a few days or as long as you like. It would be good to have you around. But I wouldn't dream of charging you for the privilege. Everyone who has lived here at the Piebald trailer park at some point has been like family to me. And that includes you, Rexella, along with your late Aunt Gladys Fenchurch.
Mr. Piebald shook his bald, shiny head rather melancholically, and peered at me through his grey bird-like eyes.
So many of the folk that lived here when you were a little girl, when you were a teenager, are long since deceased. But Mrs. Hawkskill, would you believe it, is still very much around, and is as nosy as ever, he said with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. I guess there's some things that never do change.
She's still around? I asked, looking dumbfounded. This I hadn't expected to hear. You're kidding, right?
No, I'm not, chuckled Mr. Piebald. Mrs. Hawkskill is still very much around, and her nose is always in everything, as you know. Let's just say that woman seems to have an incredible ability to know everything. She knew before anybody else did in this trailer park that Miranda Buttons was leaving the trailer park to live with her daughter in Detroit. She knew this before anyone else did, and she advised me that unfortunately my trailer would be empty. I didn't believe a word of it, but I was proved wrong, of course. How she finds out these things before anyone else does, God only knows. Now let's see. You're going to need a key for the trailer, aren't you? You need to put on the refrigerator when you get in there. I'll send over some bed linen for you to use. Let me give you a key to your great-aunt's trailer. She's well missed around here, you know. Even when Miranda Buttons moved into that trailer, I never saw it as belonging to her. I always considered it the Fenchurch trailer, and that's what it's called these days.
So my aunt's trailer is named after her? That's incredible, Mr. Piebald. She'd be so pleased about that.
Well, I think it is a Fenchurch trailer, do you not think? Said Mr. Piebald, grinning.
He rummaged around with a huge amount of keys he had on his hall table, and pulled one off for me, and he handed it to me. On the key ring were the words, Fenchurch trailer.
There you go. Those are the keys to your great-aunt's trailer. I think it looks probably exactly as you remember it to be. Even the terracotta pots outside the front door are exactly the same. I think the only thing that you will find is different is I got the love seat recovered. It was covered with so many cat hairs from your late aunt's cat. What was her cat's name again? Lovely thing she was. But she certainly left so many hairs around.
Oh, you mean Petra? You're right. She was such a lovely cat, and she lived to an old age, let me tell you. But I remember even after she died, which was so devastating for both me and Aunt Gladys. Gladys couldn't get rid of those cat hairs out of the love seat. So I can't say I'm surprised you recovered it.
I'm glad you've come back, Rexel, I really am. It is so good to see you again, said Mr. Piebald, his face growing suddenly very serious, and his eyes almost looking sad. We don't get many people from the past coming back here. That doesn't often happen around here. So it's a privilege having you back, it really is.
Thank you, Mr. Piebald, I said suddenly, throwing my arms around him to give him a warm hug, because he'd been so terribly kind towards me. I really appreciate everything. Do you still love apple pies by any chance? Mr. Piebald's face lit up like a Christmas tree. The word apple pie still made him light up, just like the old days.
You know I love pies. You remembered that? Goodness gracious me, you've got a good memory. Well, I have to admit nothing has changed in that regard. But you know what? I really miss your great-aunt Gladys's apple pie. No one made a better apple pie than she did.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Mr. Piebald, because guess what? I know the recipe. So I'll make you one this evening. I'll pop off to the local store to buy essentials, and then I will make you a pie.
Now you're talking, said Mr. Piebald excitedly. I would be in heaven if I got to taste another piece of your great-aunt's apple pie, made by her own niece. What a lovely thought. Thank you. I would very much like that.
So there we are. That is the end of part 3 of our story. Part 4 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.